All right, so today I wanted to start as we go into, we're going to get into Matthew chapter 5 today, and it contains, of course, one of the most famous sermons in the entire Bible, right? This sermon is so famous that there are people who are completely unrelated to the church. They've never been to church, they've never read the Bible, but they've heard of the Sermon on the Mount. They know this sermon. And even if they don't know it by that name, I can guarantee you that because of things, even like popular culture, they have heard some of the things that have been said in the Sermon on the Mount, and certainly in what we're going to read today in the Beatitudes. But I want us to just go back and go over where we've been so far in the story, what has been going on, because remember, context is really important as we're going through the scripture. And so we know that Jesus has been baptized in the Jordan River. We know that Jesus then went and was tempted in the wilderness. He then escaped because Herod was starting to get real. This is a new Herod. Herod was getting real angry, and he actually arrested John. So he escaped and went up to Capernaum, which is up in the very far. We remember on the map it was the very far north on the Sea of Galilee. And he met up with Peter, Andrew, John, and James, and he began his ministry doing miraculous healings, driving out demons, and he was spreading the good news of the kingdom of God. And as he was doing this, large crowds began to draw in around him. This is all what we learned at the end of chapter 4, and this is where we find ourselves as we come into the beginning of chapter 5 today. It says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. He said, 'Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they are called the children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way that they persecuted the prophets who were before you.'" This is, of course, as I said before, the Beatitudes. It's a very famous list. It's so famous, it's been recited quite a few times, not just in churches, but also in popular culture. It's appeared on statues. It's been printed on plaques, posted around city squares, and many sometimes just single lines. And of course, we can never forget, it even appears in things like movies, such as Conan the Barbarian. What does it mean, though? What do these things mean? And why? Let's think about this. This is the first, it literally starts with, this is the first thing. Jesus goes out, he's starting his ministry, and then he pulls his disciples aside, and he says these things first. Why would he say this first? Why is this the teaching? And so we're going to break into that, and we're going to go into that one step at a time. And as I said, in verses 1 and 2, it says, "Now when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. And he said," and then he gets into the Beatitudes. The very first question I always have whenever I'm going through the scripture is, of course, the same question every time. Who is this for? Who is this spoken to? Because if I don't understand who the original audience is, I'm not going to understand the meaning of the words. Right? If I tell you to move that over there, and all you do is you just read, he said, move that over there. Out of context, you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if you have the greater context, the greater meaning, a greater scope, you can actually put together what that is and where there is. And we can understand why you would want to move that to there. The other thing I want to bring up, because I don't know about you, but when I was young, whenever I heard about the Sermon on the Mount, I think it's because we're in Canada. And so we hear Sermon on the Mount, and I'm thinking like the Rockies. Has that ever happened to anyone else when they were thinking about, like, whenever they talk about mountains in the Bible? Do you ever think of like the Rockies? Sorry, I'm the only one. Right? So when I was young especially, I was like, oh my goodness, like why were they constantly going up these massive mountains? But then of course if you actually see the mountains, like they're still big, it's still a big climb, it's still laborious to get up there. But at the same time it's much smaller, and these are much smaller mountains that they have in the land of Israel. And so what we see here is something actually quite differently. But I would often say when I've heard this thing being taught and envisioned by Jesus, we also often think about the Sermon on the Mount. It's just Jesus kind of sitting at the top speaking to a large crowd below. Right? Has anyone ever seen that? Okay? Can I get a few more nods this time so I'm not crazy? Okay. No one else sees the Rockies, but everyone else has pictured it in this way. Okay. Instead, if we pay attention and we read carefully what the words are, at least for the Beatitudes, we know this. Although there may have been other people listening, although there may have been other people coming and clinging and wanting to hear the very words of Christ and hear about the kingdom of heaven, this teaching he's about to give isn't necessarily for them, although it's good for them. But it's for those that are close to him, the disciples, the ones that have pledged to follow him and follow him through thick and thin. Right, it says it was his disciples began to teach, his disciples came to him and he began to teach them. And what does he want to teach them? He starts with this: blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And I always wondered, why would Jesus start this teaching with these two? Or why is it given in this manner at all? Why is he kind of giving it out in like little blurbs, like little proverbs? Why does he do it in this manner? And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, maybe it has to do with, these are easy for them to remember. And the disciples, and we certainly know this through church history, the disciples are certainly going to need to remember this wisdom later on, after Jesus is arrested, after Jesus is crucified, after his resurrection, and after they're going to be persecuted. All of these things that are about to be taught are going to be incredibly invaluable for their time of ministry that is coming before them. And if you call yourself a disciple of Jesus Christ, you call yourself a Christian, someone who's following in the steps of Christ, then you too are a disciple, and this applies to you. This teaching applies to you. And you need to understand that when he spoke these words are true today as they were then. So first off, what does it mean to be poor in spirit? Because that's a weird phrase. How many of you have ever heard someone say that person's poor in spirit? I've heard something similar, yes. But we don't say it like that, right? We don't say poor in spirit. That's not a phrase that's used today. But it's not exact. It does, however, refer to those, as Carol suggested, those that are in need of God. Right? They need the Lord. To be poor in this instance, the illustration that Matthew is trying to draw us to be poor is the word that he's using there as a noun is to be a beggar on the side of the road. Someone who sits out with their hand out, hoping for the goodwill of someone as they pass by. But of course, in the spirit is what they say. Not poor in money, not poor in wealth or bread or food, but poor in the spirit, of course, being the same word that we use for the Holy Spirit, being pneuma. What they're talking about here is these are people who are desperate for God. And what are they calling out for? They're not calling out for alms. They're not calling out for bread. They're calling out for God. With their hands out, they cry out that, God, I need more of you. These are people that are poor in spirit. So when you call after the Spirit of God, when you call after God, seek after God, realize to yourself, look, I need more of God. I have to have more of God in my life. God, please give yourself to me. I need you, Lord. When you seek, when you yearn, when you beg for more of the Spirit, then the kingdom of heaven is yours. Claire, even recently, she asked me, and I know this is a question that used to plague me for a long time. How do I know if I'm really saved? How do I know if I'm a real Christian? What does it really mean? And so I just walked her through some simple questions. Yes or no? Hey, Do you believe that Jesus died and rose again? Do you believe that he's, going to return? Do you believe that he was the Son of God? And do you believe that we need to follow after him? Do you believe that we need to submit our lives before him? Yes. Okay, well then that's how you know you're a Christian. But you needed to seek, you need to yearn, you have to beg for it, you have to go after it. And guess what? There's no amount of good deeds that you can do, there's no amount of effort that you can put in that's going to make you richer in it than what God can give you. You cannot earn your way in, you can't just follow your way in. It comes by the goodness of God and his mercy expressed to us, his goodness and his generosity as he pours out on us. It's the pursuit of one's soul that requires a good deal of determination. And it also goes with blessed are those who mourn, because you only mourn when you lose. And when we hear the word mourn, we typically think of death, but it's not. It's the word mourn is wider than that. It's not necessarily death, although it certainly includes death. It's more than just losing a friend or loved one. Sometimes we mourn when great tragedy befalls us. We lose a job, we lose our car, lose our house, right? We mourn. And the trouble is when we're mourning, right? What's one of the things that almost everyone always says? And I hear this all the time because I'm a pastor and I go to a lot of funerals and I hear this from people time and time again. It doesn't matter how many people are around you, it doesn't matter how much love people are showing you, you always hear the same thing, and it is, I am alone. They feel alone. Because mourning does that to you, doesn't it? It separates us off. But what does God say? What is Jesus telling them? Hey, when you mourn, you will be comforted. You're not alone. God will never leave you. If you're the one, and this is why I included them together, if you're the one that is seeking after, yearning after, going after God, you're realizing, I don't have what it takes and I need to go after the Lord, and only the Lord can give me what he can provide. He's the only one that can fill that void. He's also the only one that is going to be able to be there and change that thing in your heart that makes you feel alone. When we lean on God, we can realize we are never alone. In our times of mourning, in our times of suffering, in our times of great disappointment, the Lord is there, and he is with us. And he helps us to find peace. Verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. When's the last time you called someone meek? Doesn't come up. And in fact, I thought about that because I was like, man, but no one uses the word meek. It's a bit confusing. But as a Christian, and especially when I was a Christian new to the faith, I definitely struggled with this because no one uses this word. And even if you look up the definition, you can, if you're one of those people like I am, you'll go to the dictionary and look it up and figure out what this word means, and you kind of go through it. I did actually go through a bunch of different Bible translations that I was looking for just to see how other Bible translations would translate this particular word, and everyone comes up meek. And I think it's because if you look at the actual definition, the actual word in the Greek, we don't really have a more suitable word in the entire English language than meek. Because meek encapsulates so much. See, meek, to be meek, to be someone who is being referred to here is someone who is mild-mannered, who is humble, who is, submissive. And I think they chose this word I think the Bible translators, the ones that translated it into English, chose it very carefully because it is so much more than any one of those three attributes. It's not just blessed are the humble. It's not just blessed are the mild-mannered. It's not just blessed are the submissive. It's all of that combined. Meekness shows restraint and is humble. You do not think of yourself as more than your master. And and if you are a Christian, then there is an authority over you. And when there's someone in authority over you, you must give respect, dignity, and honor to that master. And in this case, it is Jesus. And Jesus is telling the disciples that if they remain in this manner, if they remain meek, then the whole earth will one day be their inheritance. Now, you've heard me say in the past that meek is not weak, and this is true. It can be, but it doesn't mean it is. Right? You could be incredibly feeble and be meek. You cannot, but if we pay attention as we go through the entire Bible, if we don't just stop and only base our lives off of one single set of words that are written down, if we instead look at the entire Bible, we see that Jesus actually calls us not to be weak, but actually to be strong. And strength means more than just physical strength. It means we need to be strong in our stature, strong in our spirit, strong in our convictions, strong in our beliefs, strong in our values. And strength is an incredibly important aspect in our lives. But here's the thing. How does strength and meekness go together? Because strength without submission leads to arrogance. Think about some of the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world. And if they don't submit themselves beneath someone else, like you can see the difference. It's just night and day between those that are devout Christians and those that aren't. Those that are devout Christians that are given great power, great wealth, great responsibility, it's like they're still connected to our reality. Whereas some others, I don't really want to name names, but you guys know who I'm talking about. There's all kinds of different celebrities. There's all kinds of powerful people out there. And we've all seen it. They talk about things and it's like, that's not even real life. What are you talking about? This isn't real. They become untethered because they become arrogant. Too much power allows them to go off the rails. See, it's clear right from the beginning that strength can be a trap. But there's a way to avoid the trap. See, submit to Christ. If we yield to him, then he will not lead us astray. Verse 6, blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. I love that it's described as hunger and thirst, because hunger and thirst are just some of the most basic, most primal aspects of our entire being. And it's saying, look, if righteousness isn't the thing that you're after, just to sustain you, at the very base level of yourself, then what is going on? One of the aspects of righteousness I'm going to talk about for a moment here is justice. Justice is a good thing. For indeed our Lord is good and just, right? We talk about this all the time. God is a good judge. God will have ultimate justice in the end. And I remember when I first started hearing things, for example, about things like social justice in our society, it kind of grips a hold of you, and it's a trick of words, right? It's like if you had a group of rioters that went by the name of Healthy Happy Grandmas, but they were going around burning down cities. Like you would still be, you'd have to say healthy, happy grandmas are burning down cities. Sounds weird. It's a trick of words. But the fact of the matter is that a lot of times in our world today, we're not actually seeking justice. We use justice as a mask to actually cover up our desire for vengeance. And I want us to make sure that we draw some separation here between justice and vengeance. See, righteousness, as I said, is more than just justice. And if we understand righteousness in its wholeness, then we can understand how justice is going to be had. See, righteousness means to be right and just, to be good and just. This is the difference between Jesus and the Pharisees. See, the Pharisees, they lived good lives according to the law, and they followed all the letters, and they made sure that they didn't violate the law. But if it meant... And the problem is, this isn't just happened to the Pharisees. I've heard this with even modern Christians today. They'll fall into the same trap. It'll say, well, if your wife is unfaithful, then you can divorce her. And they'll say, well, she was unfaithful in her duty to me because she didn't do this and this and this. Therefore, I have grounds to separate from her and divorce her. And so this was actually going on. This has happened in the church through our history. This was happening with the Pharisees in their history. Right? This was going on. People were kind of, they're playing those legal games. Playing those games where they're saying, well, it's technically in the law. Yeah, technically. I always say this, Claire, what do I always say to you? I say, stop being a lawyer, don't I? I do that all the time. You said blah, 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 and I look at her, I say, stop being a lawyer. You know what I mean, right? And that's the difference between the Pharisees and then Jesus. Jesus who comes along and says, hey, you know what? It's not just not killing. Don't even be angry with your brother. It's not just be faithful to your wife. It's don't even allow the fantasy to enter your mind. Right? Jesus takes it to the next level. Jesus takes it all the way because he recognizes the spirit of the law is greater than just adhering to the letter of the law, but that instead he wants life to go good for you. And the best way to do that is to actually live out the spirit of the law. Remember, Jesus described it as a hunger and thirst. It has to be the primal desire of your very soul that you need this to sustain your life. I need righteousness to sustain me. I need to live right, and I need to live justly. Because otherwise, if we become one of those that are just like the rest of our world, what we're really asking for when we say justice isn't justice at all. We're just asking for vengeance. Verse 7, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. This seems like foreshadowing to me of the golden rule that, of course, Jesus will teach later on. Of course, it's also referencing the golden rule that has already been taught in Deuteronomy. Yet, once again, we see this as a quick tool that the disciples are going to need and lean on in the future in the years to come. Why is it that we should expect mercy from the Lord if there's no mercy found in our own hearts? I say this all the time, especially when we're talking to Claire and raising her up and we're trying to make her a good woman of God. And I say, yes, but why should this, if not this, right? Why should we expect mercy if we're not willing to give any? This immediately reminded me of David and Nathan in the book of 2 Samuel, where Nathan comes before David as he's a king, and he says, King, this man has done this terrible, awful, no good thing. And David just gets angry. He's full of wrath. And he's like, we must hit him with the full penalty of the law. This cannot go. This affront is terrible. And Nathan goes, that man that I'm talking about is you, O king. It's you, David. And immediately David saw the error. What's David immediately begin doing? He begins pleading for mercy. God, I do deserve your wrath, but please give me mercy. See, a lot of times when we say we hunger after justice, as I said before, this is why the Bible tells us the justice is the Lord's. Because a lot of times we hunger after justice, but it can very easily turn into vengeance. We need to allow God to be the good judge. That's not our role. That's not our place. It's not our decision. We need to show mercy so that we too shall be shown mercy. Because at the end of the day, would we have been better off if God just killed David then and there for breaking his law, for violating his covenant, for going against the will of God? Or is the show of forgiveness and mercy and redemption of David, isn't that better? That he says, look, I know you're not perfect, but I will redeem you. I will purchase you back from the chains of sin. If we want God to show us mercy, if we want Jesus to show us mercy, then we too need to show mercy to those around us, because it does welcome people back home. It welcomes God's children to come back home. Verse 8, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. How many times have you heard people say that they want to see the face of God? Man, especially new Christians, right? I hear this all the time with new Christians, and they're just praying, God, I want to hear your voice. God, I want to see your face. I want. And yet here we are. We're given a recipe to see it happen. How do we do it? You want to see God? You want to hear his voice? It's simple. Live a life pure of heart. Now it's like the poor rich young ruler, right? Like he hears this, he hears something that seems absolutely impossible. How do I live a pure life? It's a tall order. But it goes back to what we talked about before. Are you seeking after, are you yearning after, are you going after righteousness? Are you going after goodness, mercy? It means that we need to go above and beyond the law, in which Jesus will eventually go on to elaborate further. It means that more than just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law, as we talked about before. Like I said, it's about doing more than just not killing. To be pure means I'm not even going to be angry with you, brother. I'm not even going to hold a grudge. I'm letting it all go. I hold nothing against you because God is good. This is what it means to be pure of heart. It's not just your actions and making sure your actions are good, but making sure the very desires in your soul are good as well. And you may hear from the world around us, and how many of you have heard this? I can't help what I feel. I'm going to use a very strong word here. That's malarkey. For those kids out there, that's a very old word that no one uses anymore, and they're just thinking I'm an old man now. So yes, you can. You can control your desires. It's foolish. You know what can't control their desires? Animals. And of course, no one likes being called an animal, right? You wouldn't want to, and if you don't believe me, just try calling a woman a cow and see how well that goes. Right? We don't like being referred to as animals. No, I'm better than that. I have reason. I'm a rational human being. I'm able to do this and this and this, and yet for some reason you think you can't control your desires? Of course you can. Of course you can. Now, I do want to make a distinction here. There is a difference between our desire and our temptation. Okay? I do want to make sure I have a very distinct line here. Because the temptation isn't sin. It's your desire that comes after the temptation. That's where the sin comes in. And I've heard people often refer to, there's this rule that people will, I can't remember where I first heard it. It was a long time ago, but it's been referred to as the second look rule. And it's in reference to David when David saw Bathsheba up on top of the roof of his palace. And the point is that David's temptation was that as he was up on the roof, there was a beautiful woman down in the river. That was his temptation. His sin came in the second look when he looked back and gazed upon her and desired her and wanted her for himself. That's where the sin came in. It wasn't that he saw her. It's that he desired her and wanted her for himself, and he allowed the impurity to enter his heart, and it very nearly destroyed him because he could not get a handle on his desires. Fact of the matter is, we all know, we've all been there. How many guys have been in this situation? I ask specifically guys because you'll probably be able to relate more. How many guys have been in a situation where you've been so angry with someone, you're like, if I could get away with it, I would kill them? No hand. Okay, a couple nods, which is good, because I was going to say, if I don't see any like confession here, I'm a little more worried you did kill them. Because the testosterone just gets you going sometimes. You get amped up, and it's like, oh, like, but we're able to control that desire. We hold it back because we go, no, that's no good. That's wrong. I can't do that. That would be evil. We can control desire. Don't let anyone tell you you can't, because you can. And to take away that is to take away your agency and say you're no better than an animal. Finally, blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And this one is simple. Ask yourself, do I cause strife? Do I like to stir the pot? We've all had those people at work. Do we like to stir the pot, or do we like to settle, let's bring some peace? Now, we all know who we are, which one of these we are, right? We all know that there are those two types of people, because you're either those that will avoid conflict altogether, and I don't need to point out people because you all know who you are in this situation, or you're the one that likes the clash. And I want to call it clash and not conflict because I think there's a difference here, right? I think clash is a better term because it explains, like, and the reason I say that is because I'm definitely one of these people. I like to have a good debate. I like to have a good argument, and as long as it's productive. But the difference between clash and conflict is how it resolves. Do you create strife and problem in between you and your neighbor? Or in the spirit of a good debate, do you just allow that to, okay, you know what? We disagree, but I still want to get together with you for the barbecue this Saturday. How's that? Right? Like, I feel like that's a fairly normal human relationship. And we can understand that because, but at the same time, right, there are people look at us, people look at each other, and they make judgments all the time. And the question that you have to ask yourself is, if you're calling yourself a Christian, if you're calling yourself an ambassador for Christ in your community and in your place, when people look at you, do they see you as a peacemaker or do they see you as a troublemaker? Right? This is an important detail. Because the peacemakers, they're the children of God. The people that are like, you know what, let's not fight about it. Hey, I get it. We're coming from two different angles. We come from two very different points of view. How about this? Let's just let that simmer for a bit. We can come back to that later, but let's not allow this to put a wedge between you and I, because that is no good. And then let's just read the last couple, 3 verses. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. I included these last two together because they're very similar. And to be fair, although it seems like Christians are the one identity group that is able to be picked on in North America, let's face it, and let's be honest. Although it's not right, I'd still much rather live in Canada than in Nigeria. I was actually talking to John about this earlier this week. Like, and a lot of people just have no idea. It's one of those things actually I get from Rebecca all the time. She'll ask me, "Hey, this big thing is going on. What does this mean?" And I'm like, "I don't know," because I've been paying attention to things that are going on in the Christian world. So sometimes I get out of touch with what's going on in the rest of the world. But Nigeria, for example, has been undergoing the strangest, most undocumented slaughter of Christians that's been going on for like the last, 25 years. It's been insane. Tens of thousands of people have been killed and churches burned to the ground. Men, women, children, families in their sleep. They just ride in, gun them down. Whole villages will be slaughtered overnight for the simple fact that they believe in Jesus. It's insane. And yet, what does the Lord tell us? Hey, you know what? Even when they come against you, and they will, because we know this, there's a cost to being a Christian. It means you got to be different. You're outside. You're not in the system. You're not part of the culture. You are different. And with that cost means that sometimes the world will come against us. Sometimes lightly, sometimes really difficultly. But as I started at the very beginning with, who do you submit to? Who is your authority? Who is the one that is above your life? Because if Jesus is the one, if God is the one, then what he's telling us here is, look, they persecuted the prophets, the people that came and spoke for God before me. They persecuted them, and just like that, they're going to persecute you. And guess what? For your sacrifice, for your efforts, I'm going to welcome you into the kingdom of heaven. What was it that Stephen said as he was being stoned to death? He doesn't cry out to them that they're going to burn in hell. He doesn't cry out to them to please stop. Instead, he looks up and he sees, I see the glory of Christ. Because he recognized he was being welcomed into the kingdom of heaven. Those words were more than just words for Stephen. Those words are more than just words for those in the persecuted church all around the world. It's a very reality. It's the hope that they have. See, the cost to be a Christian in today's world is still there, especially if you're outward facing, if you're unashamed, and especially if you live in a situation and circumstances that are difficult and dangerous. But at the end of the day, you got to ask yourself, if you're willing to deal with all these things, if these Beatitudes that Jesus laid out, that he gave the disciples right off at the beginning, he said, look, this is how it is, this is what it's going to be. So what are you going to choose? What are you going to do? Are you going to submit to God and use these as a reminder, right? We can go through these ourselves. Yeah, you know what? I need to be meek. I need to be humble. I need to be merciful. I need to show, I need to go after justice. I need to seek and hunger after righteousness. Is this you? Did this describe you today? Because if it didn't, it's not too late. That's the beauty of the redemption of David, is that we too can be redeemed. We too can go after God, and we too can turn our lives around. And we can say, God, I screwed up. I made a mistake, but please forgive me, and I'm going to go after you going this day forward.